The next Shaquille O'Neal to the Gophers? Not quite, but an update on some incoming potential prospects and latest Gophers updates for basketball today.
Hey,
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Now, we've been doing a lot of basketball talk, or a lot of football talk. Today, we're moving to basketball talk. I'm even jumping ahead of myself right now, but that's because that's how excited I am to give you the latest and greatest on the Gophers men's basketball team. But first, be sure to head on over to YouTube and subscribe to the podcast and be able to join the community that we are building with Locked On Golden Gophers. And be sure to follow wherever you get your podcasts and leave a 5-star review. It helps others find the podcast. But enough of that, let's get right to it. And we're jumping and talking about Gophers basketball today. First, we're going to talk about the overall picture of this Gophers basketball team and the latest updates. And that comes with injury. Now, if you're a diehard Gopher basketball fan, you've probably already heard the news. But there isn't one, but two key injuries that happened to the Gophers this off-season. The Gophers took another blow due to injury. Isaiah Ihnen was lost for the season along with Parker Fox. Both of them suffering knee injuries, not only this year for this off-season heading into 2022, but also last year in 2021. Both suffering knee injuries then as well. I absolutely feel for them. I mean, they were both looking to be key figures and key pieces in the rotation on this Gophers men's basketball team, bringing experience and leadership that this team needed, especially losing 7 seniors from last season. Honestly, the blow that we are dealt, it makes the outlook for this team look a lot different, in my opinion. But what does that mean? Well, initially, I had the Gophers marked as number 8, or rated as number 8 in the Big Ten Conference. That went Indiana, Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa, and Illinois in the top 5. Then Michigan State, Purdue, and then Minnesota at number 8. Wisconsin behind them, Rutgers, PSU, Penn State, and Nebraska, Maryland, Northwestern to close it out. Now, these blows move Minnesota, in my opinion, down to that 11 range as opposed to number 8, and it changes the expectation. With the oldest vets, I was anticipating that this would be a team that was a tough out in the conference, but a team that fights and scraps its way into another tourney entry. Now, I anticipate more of a growth year, a huge growth year for the Gophers basketball team. And with 5 true freshmen on the roster, and at least 3 of them are likely to need to play key and heavy minutes this season, that just changes the entire outlook, in my opinion. I also expect a lot of minutes from Trayton Thompson this year, who I guessed was going to play a much smaller role for the Gophers. I guessed maybe around 10 to 12 minutes a game. Well, now with these injuries and these blows dealt to the roster, I believe he'll be more in that 20 to 24 minutes a game as opposed to the lower role. I anticipate a big jump from him. We already knew that J-Mo, Dawson, Talon, and Torres, barring Dawson gets cleared with the hardship waiver, would have got a lot of heavy minutes, bringing a lot of heavy experience. Then you had Parker Fox and Ihnen to join them as the top 6 in the rotation. Then on top of that, to have a rotation of 8, which Coach Ben Johnson so far has used more of a smaller lineup and sprinkled in some experience for the younger guys then. I was anticipating that it'd be a rotation of 8. Those 6 would be the main guys, and then 2 additions of Pharrell Payne and Braden Carrington would carry a lot of minutes for the young guys, filling out that rotation of 8. Well, now, in their place, I believe we see a lot more minutes for Trayton Thompson, Caden Betts, and Jaden Henley. That would be 9 players in the rotation taking up key minutes, but that's quite the difference. I mean, because in that rotation of 9, you have 4 true freshmen that you're looking to really work in. You have a sophomore that you're looking to get a ton of minutes, and then you've got those older experienced guys, 4 guys on top of that. So it's a different outlook. It's a different trajectory for the Gophers basketball team, but it's not necessarily all a bad thing. Next, I want to give you updates on the class of 2023 and what those commits and recruits are looking like. But first, a message from the NHTSA. You're hanging out with some friends, putting back a few drinks. A few become a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up? You lose your license? You lose your job? You total your car? You kill someone? Everyone knows about the risks of drunk driving. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on the road to save lives. So if you're thinking you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, and plan to get a ride ahead of time. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Now, once again, thank you for making Locked On Golden Gophers your first listen when it comes to Gophers sports daily. Daily, folks, Monday through Friday. We are putting in this grind to make sure you have the latest information for Gopher sports, including football, men's basketball, women's basketball, men's hockey, and women's hockey sprinkled in there as well. We're talking all of the key Gopher sports, and we'll even give updates for the great Gopher successes that we see outside of those sports too. So be sure to subscribe, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, and join the community. It's time. It's time to show people why Gopher Nation is the best and the most underrated fan base across the nation, especially in the Big Ten. So be sure to subscribe, and I appreciate each and every one of you as we move forward. Now we're talking about the class of 2023, and Cam Christie is the latest commit to the Gophers basketball program. Now, we haven't talked about him on the podcast quite yet because we have been just buried in football updates and news with the season approaching and starting next week. But Cam Christie, 4-star guy, number 84 player in the country now according to 247's player rankings. He was bumped up recently, and he's our sole 2023 prospect at the moment with the reclassification of Caden Betts, which we've talked about on the show. If you need more information on him, be sure to watch those 2 shows that we've done on Caden Betts. Now, Cam Christie's brother is Max Christie, who played 1 single year at Michigan State last season before getting drafted by the Los Angeles Lakers in the early 2nd round, their first pick of the draft. They took Max Christie very early in the 2nd round. Now, Cam Christie, his brother, is a shooting guard with a sweet stroke, especially in the mid-range game. He can create from the mid-range very efficiently. He's still growing. He's still improving. He has very high ceiling if he reaches his max potential. He fills a solid need as a two guard who can also handle the basketball and pass well as well. He had offers from Iowa, Michigan State, Ohio State, Illinois, Purdue, and Virginia. Get excited, Gophers fan. Get excited because you're not used to hearing something like that. We beat out Indiana, Illinois, Purdue, Virginia, Ohio State, and Michigan State for a guard? Yes, we did that. We did that. And Ben Johnson is just getting started. The program is changing, and you just have to have patience as we grow. What is building in Minnesota when it comes to Gopher sports is something special. We're seeing it with the football team, and the more winning and the better recruiting and building something to last. And now we're seeing it with the basketball team. Even Coach Fleck in one of his press conferences this offseason during fall camp talked about how Coach Ben Johnson is building something special, just like we're doing in the football team, and he's building it the right way. That was the key there. He's building things the right way. So we're not only doing it in football, what you're seeing in football and enjoying in football and getting excited for, we're doing that same thing. We're just earlier stages in the process with basketball. So get excited. And not just men's basketball, but women's basketball as well, bringing in the best rated recruiting class ever in the history of the women's basketball program coming through as well, which we're going to talk about next week a little bit more in detail, is updates on the women's basketball team. But it's a great time to be a Gopher fan. Now let's talk about some guys that we are still heavily in on and trying to get our last official scholarship for the 2023 class. We're trying to get one of these three commits. The first is Nolan Winter. Seems like we are in his top two, so it's narrowed down between us and the Wisconsin Badgers. Now tell me you've heard this story before. A Lakeville North kid is considering the Gophers and the Badgers. Who's going to win out? Well, history has said the Badgers have consistently won that battle. We saw it with Tyler Wall. We saw it with Nate Reavers. And now we have Nolan Winter. Yet another Lakeville North kid who is considering the Badgers, but we are hopeful the result is different this time around. He's a Gopher legacy. His father, Trevor Winter, played for the Gophers in Dinkytown back in 1993 to 1997. My initial worry was the Gophers were backing off of him with their only scholarship left, but Ryan James definitely cleared it up on that one, stating the coaches had been prioritizing Winter and their push for him and their communications with him even more than what they have done with Tyson Chapman, with the effort that they've been putting in. He might be the lowest ranked of these three players, but he is a very talented player and may be the most realistic of the three as well. So he's someone that talked about wanting to make his decision here in August, so we could maybe hear news sooner than later, but we're keeping an eye on that one. Now the next of the three competing for this last scholarship for us is Dennis Evans. Dennis Evans, we're in his top three for considerations between us, Kansas, and TCU. Quite the variety of programs right there, if you ask me. Quite the variety. TCU, you don't really hear too much about them for basketball. Then you've got the Jayhawks, who are the reigning champions and consistently in that top conversation, consistently churning out number one seeds in the NCAA tournament. And then you've got the Gophers, a growing program in the Big Ten. So very vast, different. 5-star guy overall, number 16 in the consensus 247 rankings. But get this, he is 7'1". Not quite as tall as Shaquille O'Neal, but right there. When's the last time the Gophers have had a true 7'1" player? It's been a while. I cannot think of one. We've had some solid big men over the years in Curry, in Daniel Oturu, but those guys are honestly a true 6'9", maybe 6'10" at the best. We're talking 7'1", folks. 7'1". It's just something you don't really see for this program. And on top of a 5-star guy, a top 20 recruit in the nation, considering the Gophers, and he's not from here. He is not from Minnesota. I believe he's from California. Very different. Very different, very exciting, but that is what Ben Johnson, Coach Johnson, is doing. He stated when talking about the Gophers, he values the relationships he built here. He likes the location and things that would keep him focused in on basketball, but most of all, he is intrigued by the style of play which Coach Johnson runs here, and he thinks that he would thrive in that type of system. Now, it would be an absolute blast to have him commit and join the Gophers, given his high ranking being something we're not used to, given his size, again, something we're not used to. But overall, I'm still hesitant. I'm still unsure if that's a realistic option, but that is what we are looking at. He is looking to make official visits with all 3 of those schools, so we're still in the race, we're still in the running, and it's exciting. Now, the final player we need to talk about is Tyson Chapman, number 45 player in the nation when it comes to consensus 247 player rankings. The top player in Minnesota. Nolan Winter was the second player in Minnesota. Now, we are in his top 5 choices, along with Kansas, Xavier, Virginia, Ohio State, and us. A lot of programs in there with a lot of different identities. I can't really tell where he's at, where we stand. It seems like we will get an official visit here in this early part of fall. He's already visited Xavier. He's already visited Kansas, I believe, and I can't remember if he has visited Virginia or not. But there aren't a lot of updates as of late. There doesn't seem to be a timeline on Tyson Chapman, but I am extremely wishful for him because we need a point guard. That is one critical need for this team. Whether it's a big man, a true big man with some real height to help us clean up on the boards, or a true point guard to help fill the shoes and the role of Talon Cooper once he leaves. He's got 2 years of eligibility, or Torres Samuels, who is going to be here for 1 year. We need another true point guard to learn from those guys, to grow with this program, and I think Tyson Chapman would be a great person to do that. Now, I'm wishful for the positional need, but I'm doubtful overall. Though he does value being in Minnesota and being close to home, I'm just not sure if this is where he'll end up committing. We've seen this story before. Now, Coach Ben Johnson has changed the outlook for these top guys and holding and maintaining them in Minnesota like we did for this past class, but I'm still not sure on this one. So that's the latest updates with our recruiting in the class of 2023. Now, the last thing we're going to do here is talk about what it all looks like moving forward. So how this all plays out moving forward is the real focus this season. I mentioned it briefly as we opened the show, but it looks like it's going to be a lot more of a developmental season for the Gophers this season, focused on those young guys, but depending how quickly they can step up into the roles will determine the overall outlook for the Gophers men's basketball team. That said, the heavy experience this season for young guys, so getting a lot of minutes for Pharrell Payne, for Braden Carrington, for Caden Betts, for Jaden Henley, even getting time for Josh Ola-Joseph, who might come along a little bit slower, but he's still going to be a very nice piece in this rotation eventually. Getting minutes for those guys, getting more minutes for sophomore Trayton Thompson, who is also 7 foot. I talked about Dennis Evans being someone, we don't get someone that size. Well, we do have Trayton Thompson, who is probably 6'11", but might be a true 7 foot right there. getting those guys experience, getting those guys time can contribute to major gains heading into next season. Now, next season, we could have Jamison Battle back. It depends on what his outlook looks like, if he's going to try to take a jump to the pros, depending on the season he has, what Dawson Garcia does, and if he stays, depending on the season he has. I do believe that we'll have at least one of the two, hopefully both of them back for seasons next year. But you put those two guys in with now 4 to 5 freshmen, sophomores from this year having a ton of experience under their belt. And then you bring back guys like Isaiah Ihnen, Parker Fox, who hopefully can contribute and be back to the athleticism that they've shown for years prior to these injuries. Then you bring in true freshmen like Cam Christie, like hopefully Dennis Evans or Tyson Chapman or Nolan Winter, to learn from those guys and work in spot minutes here and there. I mean, it's an exciting time. And the minutes that those young guys get this season could be key to helping the Gophers be a Big Ten contender next season. It's quite a jump, but that's how you can do something like that, is having a ton of depth, a ton of experience with young guys, and you consistently build the program then. Then we're looking from last year's seven senior team where we lost a ton of players to next year having a team built mainly on sophomores and freshmen, and then 2 or 3 key upperclassmen like Battle, Garcia, and Cooper. That's huge. That's huge. It's building things in a very different way, something that could help sustain for the future. Now, although the outlook may change, if the freshmen prove to be immediate contributors, then maybe we could see that 8-ish range. If they turn out to be immediate contributors and be really special, these freshmen of 2022, then maybe we still are in that 8-ish range. Maybe it is something that could be a possibility to find our way into the tournament. We won't know until we see how these guys play immediately and develop. But that's not the expectation. The expectation is to grow. So there is positive development. There is positives to this whole situation. But overall, it does stink a little bit that it is happening to 2 promising athletes on the team who fought so hard to be back this season and are committed to this Gophers program. Regardless of the tough years in this rebuilding program, this program is something you should be excited for moving forward, and what Coach Ben Johnson is building with this program. We are in good shape. We are in great shape moving forward, and it's a good time to be a Gopher fan. That's the stress of this podcast. So that's going to do it for us today on Locked On Golden Gophers. Tomorrow we are going to talk about Tanner Morgan and what we need from him in order to be contenders in the Big Ten as a whole. Then Friday we're going to talk about what a successful season would look like for Mo Ibrahim. So stay tuned. Be sure to tune in. I'll see you tomorrow.